about we try it again? We got a little love story by Taylor Swift.
We were both young when I first saw you. I closed my eyes and the flashback starts.
They're telling everybody we're jumping on. There he is. Brandon, you froze all of a sudden. Okay, let's try this again. Are you coming on? Kim Schilling's in the house. Love Shack 24. Okay, here we are. Let's try that again.
Yeah.
Apparently, Instagram did not want to hear about your hair.
No,
So,
I did it. It was like, cut him off. cut him off.
all of a sudden you froze. I'm like, Brandon. All right, so here we are at December, almost 2025. I feel like, by the way, I had a medium on a couple weeks ago, and Alison Dubois, if you've heard of her, but she was saying that basically, like this, whatever series of our lives, like there's an end, and now a new beginning starts in 2025 for like all of us. So, like, there's an ending of whatever happened over the last 9 years, and now we're heading into something new, which is sort of interesting when we talk about finding love in 2025.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love this time of year. I think particularly like New Year, and New Year's Eve, and just the New Year in general, because there's always
Like
a lot of
reflecting.
yeah, there's a lot of positive energy usually around the New Year's. People are really motivated. I like the goal-oriented nature of, New Year's resolutions. And what's really interesting is like the month January is actually named after the Greek god Janus. And Janus is depicted
Yes.
as
Who is
uh,
Janice?
a face looking forward and a face looking
Okay.
backward. So he's a two-faced god. And the idea is that while he's looking forward into the future, he's also looking backward and reflecting on the past to help guide his journey forward, which
Okay.
is why we're the tradition of reflecting on our past, or on our previous year, and looking forward into the new year came from.
So we
So
just
New
have
Year's.
Love Shack 24 says, good, just got divorced. I need love. So there you go.
So this
All
is
right.
I mean, this is, and even from the perspective of like dating, this is a pretty good time for people in general, because this is when a lot of people are start focusing on relationships.
Yeah.
Actually, even online dating, they receive the busiest time of year for them is in January.
Yeah. Because you know why? Because well, you can tell me because you're the pro at this, but I would say that people feel so lonely. It feels really lonely over Christmas, and you see everybody with their loved ones, and I think that's a time when you stop and there is time off where you realize, like, you have time to look at your life and go, "Wow, this is kind of sad that I don't have that special one to share my life with." And so I think people get like remotivated in the new year to be like, "All right, this is my year. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to find this."
Yeah.
Is that kind of where
Yeah.
that comes from?
Well, and there's also a lot of relationships that end. So,
Ooh.
In December, and we should talk about like why people should also be mindful of dating during this time, because while people are more actively dating during this period, there's also a lot of people who are getting out of relationships during this
Why
period.
why is that? Because they don't want to buy the Christmas gifts, so they're like, we're done.
Well, usually what happens is people will wait until after the holidays in December, and actually end the relationship in January and the beginning of the year. But courts, and also because like in terms of divorces, the courts are oftentimes closed, during the holidays. And so they see more divorce filings in December and in January. And January has actually been dubbed divorce month, because law offices and divorce courts see more business.
Damn it, you didn't get me what I wanted for Christmas. We're done.
We're done. So it's an interesting time, because like people who have been single, they then might put a focus on starting a relationship or finding a relationship in the following year. And then also there's a lot of relationships that are ending towards the end of the year, which then of course might motivate people to want to find somebody new, maybe find somebody that's different from their ex.
Ooh. Well, okay, so that's a good question. They say what opposites attract, but all opposites don't last. Is that true or false?
For the most part, that's true. There's a lot of research to show that couples who have healthy long-term relationships are more similar than they are different.
Ooh, interesting. And
Yeah.
why is that? Just because they see things the same way? You're not just butting heads all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Less conflict, less friction. But it's the alignment of their values. So it's
Mm,
not always like that they maybe eat the same things and do all of the same things. It's more like, do their values align? Are they
yeah.
similar values? Because
That's interesting that you say that, but you're absolutely right about that. And I hate politics, but I'm just going to mention this, that I know a few people whose relationships have almost ended because one was Democratic and one was Republican, and where this was never an issue in the past over the last bunch of years since COVID, really, the difference between political sides has really created some
yeah.
real differences.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely being seen in the matchmaking world. There's more polarization right now, and so even myself, like I've experienced with my clients that politics have taken more of a priority and a forefront in their dating criteria
Our love
than.
shack, he needs a MAGA woman. Yeah. I mean, my daughter, she will only date one specific side. She will not entertain dating a political side that's not hers.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common. I mean, it's common enough where people are putting it on their dating profiles, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
don't message me or don't reach out to me if you are this or if you're that or if you don't support this or if you don't support that. I'll say one of the biggest benefits of matchmaking is that we have the ability to explore that gray zone a little bit more and explore maybe the issues as
Mhm.
opposed to just the
Yeah.
political party itself.
Right. Wrong.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
yeah,
It's
there
like
might be
somebody.
there could be a happy medium. Although I think if somebody's saying, "Listen, I'm only going to date this side," I think that's tough.
Yeah.
It's because of common values for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And what I have found is like if somebody has like if they fully align with every issue of their political party, well, then it would make complete sense that they would say, no, I need somebody who is affiliated with this political party because I 100% align with this political party. However, even from a statistical perspective, most people when they actually look at the issues, they don't fully align with all of the
Sure.
100% of the issues of their
Yeah.
political party. And so there could be an issue where somebody says, I align with this party. However, when you dive into the issues, it's very specific issues that are more important to them
Yeah,
than
but
not.
if you go through to the point at the end game, when you say, "Are you voting for this person or this person?" If you are super set that I don't care if 99% of our values are the same. If you vote for this person, you're not my person.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely gotten to that point where
Yeah.
people are becoming very rigid with that perspective. And
So
I've
what?
had clients
Yeah.
that I've actually asked them about like specific issues. Like I'm like, okay, you're telling me that you won't date somebody who is affiliated with this side or that side. Let's talk about it. Like, tell me like the reasoning behind it. Like, I'm like, what if somebody is affiliated with this side, however, on this specific issue, they lean more towards the other side. I'm like,
Right.
what about then? And I kind of throw out these scenarios to just get a
So do
gauge
you
for.
find that helps?
It does. I've actually had several people who, after diving into it, they realize that it's
Not as big of
we're
a deal as they are
well,
portraying to
not
be.
that it's not necessarily a big deal, but that it's more about the specific issues as opposed to aligning with a specific party 100%.
So do you find as you're getting people to match that they are too rigid, not just in politics, but in so many things? I think one of the things is we think we know what we want. There's what we think we want, and then there's what we really want.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people have very rigid criteria that hasn't worked for them, and they might need to reassess that because if it hasn't been working, well, then it's probably not going to.
Because I think this is a good point as we're talking about, okay, dating in 2025. All right, what happened in 2024? Right? You didn't go on dating apps at all. You didn't try to date. There's those people. Then you're gonna have the people that were like, I absolutely hate dating apps. They're miserable. I couldn't meet anybody. Then you have the people that are like, absolutely, everybody's ugly. They're not 6'5", right? They're all losers. So it's like, how do you redirect into 2025 with maybe a better attitude, with maybe a different mindset?
Well, like I said, I think tapping into that energy of January, like look be reflective, look backwards, identify what hasn't worked for you,
Do you think
and so that you
maybe they should write this
prepare to move
out? Like,
forward.
okay,
Yes.
my son is on emergency. He was calling me. Nobody else can call through, but my kids can.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I do. I think that it can be really helpful for people to write it down, like, write maybe what hasn't been working for them. However, I will say that, sometimes the mind that created the problem can't come up with the solution.
Okay.
And so it can be really tricky for people to identify their blind spots because they are blind
So that's
spots
why
and they
they
might not
need
know.
you.
Yeah, it's like working with a dating expert can be really beneficial for helping people identify their blind
I
spots.
can help identify it for you too. I swear, I talk to people and I'm like,
Yeah.
it is so clear. All of a sudden, dating has become so clear for me to see where people are going wrong. It's crazy. It's really not. It's so complicated and yet so simple all at the same time. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Yeah, I think, in general, I find that even people who haven't been able to achieve their own relationship goals, sometimes they're really insightful and helpful with other people's
Yeah.
dating and relationship lives.
Well, if you can't do it, what do they say? Those who can't teach.
Yeah, those who can't do teach. Yeah. So I mean, like, I have like a lot of clients who tell me that they're really great at helping, like, advising their clients or their friends and their family, or seeing things that their friends and family might not see. But then when it comes time to their own dating and relationships, they don't have that same level of clarity, and they feel like their friends and family haven't provided them with the advice or insight that they need to achieve their goals,
So
which
it's
is
their
why they
friends.
seek an expert.
It's all their friends'
Yeah,
faults.
exactly. They're like, they're not helping me, so you help me. So I think that it's really important for people to reflect on the previous year and identify, like, what hasn't worked for me, what hasn't served me, so that I can let it go and revise moving forward.
Okay. And let's talk about too, looking at maybe your dating app, your profile, and how is your profile? Like, is your profile attracting people? Is it attracting the right people? Is your message on there correct? I mean, I would say that is. I'm not gonna lie. I go through and I create my profile in 5 minutes, and I'm sure other people are too. Now, luckily for me, being an influencer, like I have a ton of professional pictures. I have, right, that like in my back pocket. But most people, they go on, they post their crappy pictures, they cut off somebody's face, you got the arm, with the chopped off, or you scribble out the kids' faces, or they're just not really flattering pictures, or the sun's not great, or you're wearing a hat, you don't know if they have hair, or right. And then their descriptions of themselves are super quick, which that's where I fail. I'm like, oh, I just don't really like writing this out. But how important is all of that in putting yourself out there and starting fresh in 2025?
Well, I'd say the most important thing are the photos. So a lot of people don't read through the bios or read the prompts.
Sure. So if
Um,
you don't catch them on the picture,
Exactly. What will happen is if somebody, like, is attracted to the picture, they'll oftentimes
start.
then look it through the profile. Now, I think it's important to be thoughtful about the profile too, because that could be it. Not only is it designed to help attract the right people, but it works as a filtration system so that the wrong people can filter themselves out. Like, if you're putting in your profile the things that are important to you, your values, your goals, like, then somebody might read through them and say, wow, they talked about skydiving in here in their profile, and I'm like, I don't like to take risks. And so then they
Well,
might say, that's not for me.
we laugh because my boyfriend and I, it said in my profile, the one thing that is really true about me, I'm an indoor girl. Like, I wanted every guy to know, because everybody looks at me and goes, oh, she's fit. Let's go hike a mountain. Let's go skiing. Let's go mountain bike riding. And I'm like, this girl, she looks good because she's on flat ground with climate control, right? And so, but he of course didn't care that it said that, and wants me to go snow skiing and climbing, and anyway, so we laugh. I'm like, it said it in my profile that I don't do that.
Yes. Well, and so I think that's an important lesson for people in general. Like, they really do. If somebody is providing you with thoughtful information on their dating profiles, read it. It's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And then think about like, does this actually align or does it not align? You know, if it's something that it doesn't seem like they're making a big deal out of it, it just seems a little bit casual, then it might be worth further questioning or exploration.
And another example for me is, well, back to political views. So if it says I am on this side of the politics, maybe skip it, especially if politics are important to you and
Yeah.
you're going to stick to your guns on it and they're the opposite viewpoint, like maybe not. For me, and you'll laugh, if it says Virgo, can't. I have an ex-boyfriend and my ex-husband were both Virgos, and so whatever it is, and it even says it. I'm not so into horoscopes, but it literally says in there, it says "fucking run."
No Virgos, you know, like, yeah, so it's like, so I mean, I think if people are in general, if everybody is just being more thoughtful about the content they're putting onto their dating profiles, it's going to be a positive outcome for everybody, because then more people would pay attention to the person's bios. They might look at the details and read through it, because knowing that that other person is putting information in there that's going to help them assess whether or not it might be a good fit. And then it also can let the anyone reading it know, like, make the decision as to whether I should or should not engage based off of my values and the
Yeah,
information that I'm reading.
absolutely. So would you say people should post professional pictures? What's your thought on that? And also on filters, and professional pictures also are edited so that they're not, it is the bestest version of you versus the natural version of you. What's your take on that?
I think having a combination of in terms of like photos, like, it is helpful, like not all one type of photo. I think again, it's all about using it, like the online dating platform, to help filter out the wrong people and help attract the right people.
Right.
And so like you can do that through your photos too. So I recommend like what I call the ABCs. An activity shot. And so that should be you doing something that you enjoy. But it also should be important information for anybody looking at your
So if you're
profile. Like,
a pickleball player or a
yeah,
hiker or a biker.
yeah, then get an activity shot of you doing that. It doesn't have to be like a close up or, a staged photo. It could be a more candid looking photo.
Mhm.
Be a body shot, something full length, like knees
Yes,
up.
full length. Show your body.
Yes, because like people want to know, like people need to know. Like again, it's part of the filtration system. Like somebody, you don't want somebody to go on a date and then just be like, oh wow, not my body type at all.
Well,
Because
and
then
that's
you
the
just
thing.
waste people's
Why
time.
piss somebody off? Like they're gonna find out. So show it up front so you don't waste your time and their time.
Yes. And and then C is a close up. That could be a selfie, it could be a professional headshot. But all the common theme for all of these types of photos is they need to be clear, they need to have good lighting, they should have a good angle. You need to it needs to be flattering overall. In terms of like edited versus not edited, like I don't think any of photos should have extreme filters on them
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
However, there are editing tools that don't alter a person's appearance. They just like refine the quality of the photo. Because I mean, like, let's be real, like when you're taking a static image, like sometimes that's not representative of what a person looks like in real life either. It might be unflattering or it might be more flattering.
That's
Like,
true.
and so like I think that if you're editing a photo, you could say, all right, I'm just refining this so that maybe it still looks like how I look in person, but it's adjusting the quality of the photo because this photo wasn't the best quality, and I don't feel like it's fully representative of how I look in person. Like, that's okay.
Right. And men need, if you have hair, even if you don't have hair, you need to have hat. If you like having a hat on, you also need to have a picture with your hat on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think having exactly a variety. Don't have pictures where you're wearing hats and all of them, where the person
Yeah.
has no idea whether your
Or
hat fits.
sunglasses. Please tell me what's up with the sunglasses.
Right. I mean, I see that a lot too. And I mean, obviously, the people are probably trying to hide like bags or, like crow's feet, etc.
We're gonna
Um,
see it. We're gonna see it. Right.
yeah, I think people just need to, like, exactly. If you're gonna have some photos with sunglasses, fine, but have some photos without. And I think overall, it's like the quality is what's most important. Like having good lighting, having a good angle, making sure that it's clear.
Yeah.
And I will say a lot of people don't know how to do this. They really don't. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why so many people have poor quality photos on their social media platforms or on their dating profiles.
So would you say, now with Instagram and with all of our social media, it's so easy to find a photographer that's local and also relatively inexpensive, especially if you're doing a really quick, like I just need to get, a few shots here. Because if you can get your active shot with your buddies playing golf or whatever, and then have a whole body shot and then a close up, like you're done.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. I mean, and like with the technology in our phones, I mean, like we pretty much have a professional grade camera in our back
True.
pocket.
Buy
And
yourself
so,
buy yourself a tripod. Here, I'll even show you here. Check it out. Okay, it's magnetic. There it is. I got my light.
yeah.
There it is. It's magnetic. It's like, I don't know, $25 on Amazon.
Yes.
Boom.
It's exact. I mean, I recommend that for my clients too. I'm like, get some ring lights, like, like for the lighting. And I was like, and I talk about how, the lighting is really important. You don't want direct light. You want diffused natural light is the
And
best.
this is a good point too, really quickly for you non-photographers out there. If you have natural light, you want to put your camera where the sun's coming in, so the sun is hitting your face, right? So you're looking out at the sun and the sun's hitting your face. So if you have a window, put your camera up right at the window and look at that window,
Yeah.
and you'll get a much prettier shot than even just using, a ring light.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think natural light is going to be the best option.
Yeah.
And again, if people are being mindful and intentional, then they should be able to carve out time to say, all right, I'm going to find a nice day when the sun's out shining. Maybe I'll invite a friend, a family member or something,
To
someone who
help.
can get a picture of me, or I'll get a tripod and I'll use the timer on my phone to get a good photo.
By the way, did you know that it was 3 seconds or 10 seconds to take a picture? Now they added a 5 second. How?
Yeah, I know. I actually just used that the other day and was like, this is like the perfect amount of time.
Oh my gosh, because 3 seconds you're like, okay, and
Yeah.
10 seconds you're like,
Okay.
I
know. I know, and either one, it's like either with the 3 second, I sometimes didn't have enough time to find the right pose.
That's what I'm
Or the
saying. You're
10
like, oh
second,
my god, okay.
yes, I would, or the 10 second, I would have the right pose, but then I would like wait, like, oh my God, how much time do I have left? And it would
And then you're switching,
Yes.
and then you're like this, and then they catch you right in the middle of the switching because you're like, you have too much time.
Yes, I love it. I think it's just the right amount of time. So,
And pictures
there's
with your pets. Pictures with your
Yeah.
pets. All my pets just ran into the house.
Well, I agree. I think that falls in that category of like, an activity. If you enjoy playing with your pets, spending time with your pets, cuddling with your
But
pets.
I also think that that's an important one because, if you're a cat person, some people are like, I do not like cats. Like, I will not, or I do not like dogs, or whatever it is. But like for me, I got 4 dogs. So it says in my profile, if I've got 4 dogs.
Yep. Yes, I mean it's a bigger deal than people might think. Particularly,
Yep.
what I've encountered is if somebody likes to travel a lot and somebody else has a lot of pets, that can be a big issue if the other person, some people get their.
So my boyfriend and I went through that because I have 4 dogs, and he's like, listen, if you can't figure out something with the dogs, like this won't work with us. So of course I'm like, got it, no problem. I have that all dialed in, but that would be a problem. Absolutely, 100%. He's like, I'm not going to spend my life at home because you have 4 dogs.
Yes. Well, and then I've also encountered people who sleep with their pets. That can be an issue too for someone who doesn't sleep with their pets.
Huge. It's actually so huge.
I had a couple this couple that I matched, and I mean they were such a great match, and they really liked each other. And the breaking point
was
the dogs. Yeah, because the woman she had 4 dogs actually, and she let her dogs sleep with her, and he had no.
I only let 2 dogs sleep with me.
Yeah, yeah. Hers was like she had 2 dogs that slept with her too, because she had 2 bigger ones and 2 smaller ones. And he was like, no, he's like, I don't want the dog sleeping with us. And it was such a big issue. And she's like, I can't, she's like, I'm not going to get rid of my dogs for him. So like,
I mean, what do you think of, but what do you think about that? I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, I think there is a time. I mean, you don't just throw out your animal; they're your family. Like you can't.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to kind of be, if that's important to you, like if you're a pet person and you consider your pets
But come
family.
on, do you know people that would just be like, okay, who wants my dogs? I'm running off with this guy.
Oh no! I mean, most people who get pet. I mean, there are irresponsible pet owners. I think, but like, I think that it depends on your how close you are with them. Like, for example, you might say, not say I'm getting rid of my dogs, but you might say, all right, I'm willing to like not let them sleep with me.
Yeah,
But some people are like, no, I'm going to let them sleep with me. So like there, I think that that's an area where people need to assess like their values and their lifestyle, and if it's
yeah,
something that's really important to them, be more upfront with it early on.
yeah.
And this can be tricky for people because like it might not seem like a big deal, right? But unless you've experienced it yourself, or you know someone who's experienced it, or you've worked with a dating professional who can give you help you identify the things that are actually big deals that you might not think are big deals.
So would you say it's super important then in going into the dating in 2025 to just lay it all out there, right? Because you're saving yourself time from trying to fit a circle into a square. Do you think we're doing that too much? Is that what the problem is, or is the problem still the fact that there's just so many people, so many options? When do you decide that this is the person?
I think it's a combination of both because let's say you meet somebody and it doesn't seem like a perfect fit. Well, on to the next. I have plenty of other options. Whereas maybe it might not seem like the perfect fit, but maybe there's room for negotiation. And I feel like that's where people are stopping. They're not giving it the grace and they're not exploring that gray
You
area as
think
much as they
they
should.
hit that like mark where you're like, up, there's friction. Fuck it, I'm moving
Yes,
on.
on to the next. Exactly.
Too
So
quick, too quickly. Are you seeing that? Do you feel like that's
I
really a
do.
thing?
Yes, and I mean, like in my business, that's
Hey,
something that I have to coach my clients on a lot and candidates. And luckily, because
no,
since people are investing in this process, they'll listen to me. But oftentimes, people will present me with deal breakers or issues or conflicts, and then we'll talk through them. And
as
I'll
we're talking about our pets.
well, hello there.
This is Rosie.
Hi, Rosie. Oh, she's so cute.
She acts like I say she has rigor mortis when
Oh my God, she's so cute. She's a little cuddle bug.
she's like, I am so scared. Put me
Oh,
down. Are you scared?
she looks pretty content. Oh, it's so
You
cute.
you want to
She's a
hang
big
out?
baby.
You just hang out
Uh,
with me. Want to hang out?
so I think that people need to, like what I'll talk about with my clients is when they encounter something that seems like a deal breaker or seems like a big issue, I like to talk through it with them. I'm like, well, let's dive into this a
Yeah.
little bit deeper. Let's unpack it and see if it's actually an issue or if it's a perceived issue.
Okay. Oh, here we have. Have you found that a person's available time is a factor in dating? It seems like we live in a busy world and it's hard to find time to date. Sophie, that's a really good question about that.
Yes. Um, one of the one tool that somebody can use, I'm going to give you like a few things that people can use going into 2025 that can set them up for
Success.
romantic success.
Ooh.
And one of them is to do a calendar audit. Take a look at your calendar and think about what needs to stay, what's a priority, what can go. And then if finding a relationship is a priority, then people need to prioritize dating because to get into a
How many
relationship.
days a week? How many days a week do you think somebody should? Okay, two questions. How many days a week, if you're really wanting to find love, should you open up in your calendar to go on dates? And then once you start dating somebody, how many days a week is reasonable to see somebody?
I recommend people start with one designated date day per week. And I tell them to allocate one day per week that's sacrosanct. And they use that day, even if they don't have a date with somebody, they can use it to go out with a friend or a family member, or they can have a self date, take themselves to the spa or to the movie. The idea is that they're designating this day for love, whether it's self love, familial love, platonic
Well,
love, or
or
romantic.
what about just going to a restaurant by yourself and sitting at a bar to the
Yeah.
person?
Either way, like allocate this time, like this time is designated for relationships, whether it's focusing on my relationship with myself or with other people, because then it sends out a message to the universe like, hey, I have space.
Okay. And then what about when you start seeing somebody and you're dating? Maybe not like the first, couple times, but you decided, okay, we're gonna be exclusive and date. As Sophie's saying, like she has a busy life. So how do you allocate what's reasonable? 2 days a week, 3 days a week?
I think even communicating like one day per week is still a good amount of time to spend with somebody.
Okay.
Now if like you're entering into, I think during the courtship period, now if you're entering into like the relationship, then it becomes a little bit easier to allocate time because maybe the person's spending the night at your house. Maybe you're spending the night at your house. Maybe you start integrating social circles. And so because of that, you have to allocate less time for that person because they're more integrated into
Mm,
your life and vice versa.
right.
So whereas like for example, like let's say I'm like, okay, I need to hang, I want to spend time with my friends. I want to spend time with my family. I have to go to work and now I need to allocate time for this new person in my life. Um, but once they're integrated more into your life, you might say, you know what, I'm going to a work function. I have like a work function this evening. They said we can bring plus ones, so I can actually bring them with me
Right.
now that we're more in that
Sure.
relationship zone. So it becomes easier to spend time with somebody the more integrated you become.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's partly where you need to align too. That gets really tough in my age group, or maybe a little bit younger, where you have young kids. So you've got two single people with their kids, and maybe their weeks aren't the same weeks, and trying to figure that whole thing out. What's your suggestion for that?
Yeah, You know, that is it's actually a pretty tricky situation if two people have opposite if their kids are younger, and they have a legal custody arrangement, and their custody schedules are opposite of
Yeah.
each other. So, at that point, it might be really important to hire like a babysitter. If you have a kid's 1 week on, 1 week off, and let's say the other person has the same schedule, but it's the opposite of yours, then you both just agree that when you do have your kids, that each of you will make it a point. Yeah, to allocate still 1 day per week,
Yeah,
and at least until becomes more serious, and then maybe you have the conversation with the other parent like, hey, can we, alter our custody arrangement a little bit
yeah,
here?
right. Yeah.
But it is tricky. But I think one of the biggest barriers that people encounter is that they're not integrating soon enough. So many people have this idea that they need to keep their lives separate, that they need to have these little microcosms with somebody until they're committed and they know they're the one. And it
But
makes
that's
it
really
harder.
that's the wrong mindset, right? Because if you're going to be a family, everybody's got to get along.
Yes, I think it's an important data point. I actually think social integration should occur before someone becomes exclusive. So it doesn't mean you have to introduce them to your kids, but introduce them to members of your inner circle. It could be a close friend, a family member. If your kids know you're actively dating and they're on board and they're supportive of you, then maybe you do introduce them to that child.
Yeah, and
Um,
that really depends on the age of the kids and all that. What is good integration time? 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so I think that integration should ideally occur within like the 2 months of dating somebody. Um,
But with
and
kids.
and well, it depends. Like again, I think that's very specific on the age of the kids, the relationship with the kids, whether the kids are aware you're dating or not dating. But there can be other levels of integration, maybe introducing them to your friends, meeting their friends, meeting other family
I also
members.
think there's a level of it really makes you feel a little bit safer when they start bringing you around other people, right? There's that bit of like, what are we afraid to share here if they're not doing that,
Right.
right?
Well,
Like if they're not introducing you to any friends or any family or right, like is there another person? Like why haven't we gotten to that
yeah.
stage?
Well, and it's a certain level, like it intensifies the connection more, and it creates a certain level of social accountability. Because what I have found is what a lot of people do is when they're dating somebody, they give them like nicknames. right? It's kind of like that old ideology around pets. Don't give them a name until you're ready to adopt them because it forms attachment. And so people will use nicknames as a way of distancing and trying to protect themselves. However, when you integrate somebody and you introduce them to your friends, that person has a name. And so then all of a sudden your friends and family start saying, they don't say, oh, who's that? Like, who's that one guy you were dating? The fireman guy? They're like, oh, how's George? And
I
so it creates a
see what
certain
you're
level
saying.
of
But when you talk
connection.
about him on the phone, he's the fireman.
Exactly. So it creates this emotional distance, automatically. And so then when somebody starts to integrate into your life and you give them a name, it creates a certain level of social accountability. To your point, though, like also, like if somebody's not doing that, it brings up questions. Why? Why are you keeping me at arm's length? So I think it's beneficial because it does intensify the connection. It creates a certain level of social accountability and attachment to the person. But it's also important data. Like you need to see how you connect with their inner circle. They need to see how you connect with their inner circle as
Well,
well.
and ironically, we talked about the pets and that whole thing, like, oh, the pets sleep in bed, and that's something you get to know as you get closer to somebody, right? But it's the same thing with your children. Even if, they don't have children, but let's say you discipline your children one way that they don't like, that could be a total deal breaker. And you've just spent 6 months creating this amazing love relationship that's not real.
Yes.
Because my real world is 4 dogs, and he got to meet my 4 dogs immediately, right? Like if this real world doesn't work for you, sometimes we walk in, there's pee on the floor.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's my world. Now, if you keep the kids completely out of that situation, all of a sudden now you're like, okay, here's my kids, and they're running around in circles and not listening, and right.
Yep.
That's a whole,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like to a certain degree, I think, people have created these boundaries that aren't serving them. I think boundaries are important, and I think people should be setting boundaries throughout the courtship and the relationship. But I
And that
think that
doesn't mean the guy should be like moving in week 3, right? But
exactly. Right, certain boundaries, but it's like I think people have like for whatever reason, whether it's because of the entertainment industry or just things that we've heard, people are setting the wrong boundaries. Like I think that social integration should occur sooner. I think that people should spend less time in these little microcosms and actually
live
spend time
life.
with each other yeah, exactly in their real lives to see how it fits, how it meshes, because it's only going to if it's the right person, it's only going to strengthen the bond and expedite the
Well,
relationship.
interestingly too, I was talking to some girlfriends about the whole wooing thing, and it's great to be wooed. It feels amazing, but that's also not real life. Then all of a sudden that turns off, and the girls are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like you were doing this, and now you're not.
Yeah, I think women in particular, I think put a little bit too much emphasis on the courtship. They have these expectations of like being courted and being wooed, and they're like, I need this. And I'm like, but do you? Because it's not probably not going to last throughout the relationship. And I'm like, does it really matter if they do X, Y, or Z during the courtship? Because if they're not going to do that during the relationship, I'm like, what does it really matter? Now I understand it can be a confidence booster. It can usually, I mean, to be frank, I think when women focus so much on the courtship, it's because they're assigning their value based off of how a man treats them, as opposed to just having value in who they are. If a man buys me flowers, if a man takes me to nice dinner, it means I'm a high value woman because he's showing how valuable I am through his actions. I think that a man can appreciate a woman without an elaborate courtship.
Mm.
I think it's okay for a man to do it, and I think it's okay for a woman to like it. But I don't think that a woman should place so much value on
I think
it.
that's a really good reminder for women, right?
I I encounter it a lot in the dating process, even in the matchmaking world, where I'll set up a great match. Both parties will agree that they like each other, that they feel that there's real potential there, that the other possesses the qualities that they're looking for in a life partner. But then usually more often the woman will say, well, he's not calling me X amount of times a day. He's not pursuing me really hard. He's not taking me to really expensive dinners. He's not buying me gifts. He's not doing these things. So that means he's not really interested in me. He doesn't see my value. And even if the man tells the woman, I like you, I see your value, I want to be in a relationship with you.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, um, I lost my train of thought. I had something very wise to say. It's gonna come back to
Okay,
me.
it'll come back. I think that again, I do think that this, from a traditional perspective, I value the courtship, but the fundamentals of the courtship should be information gathering and chemistry building. And I think that sure, could it be important information like that if a man buys you gifts, like is that important information on how he's going to treat you in the relationship?
Right.
Maybe,
Well,
but
I think this just goes back to, I think this is where this was my very important thought. There's a disconnect, right? Because we've allowed this thing to be men buy for women, take them to beautiful restaurants and buy and trips and gifts. And then women are objectified because that's what they like, right? But then they complain that they're objectified when really all they want from these men is to do that, right? Like, I'm not going to date a man who can't take me to a really expensive restaurant and buy me a Chanel bag and buy me, right? But
yeah.
that, so we've created this total disconnect because the women are expecting the men to do this thing all the time, and then the men can't really afford to do this thing all the time. And then by the way, then all of a sudden it's just a situationship. There's no real there, if that
Well,
makes sense.
yeah, well, to the point of like being objectified, like it's the man doesn't know the woman yet, right? So like the courtship is information gathering, you're getting to know each other. And so if a man is doing all of these things for a woman that he doesn't actually know yet, why is he doing it? He's not doing it because he cares for you as a human being. He's doing it because he's attracted to you, which is going to be based off physical appearance, which
Which
to a
is
certain degree is
it's fake.
objectifying.
So Sophie says that's attachment, not a real relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, there is it's I would say I would classify it more as like it's attraction versus like a true connection. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's language around the idea of being attached to someone versus actually loving someone,
More about
because they say
the appearance of it, which I think men, shame on you men, have gotten so wrapped up in this arm candy versus like compatibility and fun and aligning with values and all that kind of stuff. So I talk about, and we've talked about it, I've talked about it, the fact that I'm 50. This is like the hardest age for dating, 50 up, because a successful 40-year-old wants a gorgeous 25-year-old. A successful 50-year-old wants a freaking 35-year-old or a 30-year-old, right? So I'm dating in my 70s here. Right?
yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
and
true.
what does a 50-year-old have in common with a 30-year-old? That's your daughter.
Yep, there's usually a large generational gap, and it can be really hard to close. And I think part of it does again goes to this idea of looking for the wrong things. I think there's ideologies around the courtship that are
Things,
healthy and
hash,
unproductive.
quote unquote things.
Yes.
Things don't fill you up though at the end of the day.
No, and I think that, again, I think the courtship, if people are looking to use the courtship intentionally, it should be focused on information gathering and on chemistry and connection building, not just how much do they buy for me, how much physical touch do they give me, sex, etc. Like, people are gathering the wrong information during the courtship, and that's leading them to make the wrong long-term decisions in somebody, or
Let's talk
intentionally in
about
somebody.
let's talk about Lenny Hochstein. You know who he is from the
No.
house. He's the plastic surgeon. He was married to the
Oh,
housewives of
yeah,
Miami, and he
yes.
just re-proposed to his fiance, who's I don't know 20. Let's see, wait, great combo. It seems that many women want men to hold all the traditional values without them accepting the traditional values of a woman due to societal views. It's a good point from a man's
Yeah,
point of view.
yeah. No, I will. I say I have experienced that a lot in the dating industry, and I've had this conversation with some of my female clients, saying like, you want a man to be traditional, yet you're not embodying the same female traditions and values. And I've had that complaint from a lot of my male clients too. Like a woman will want a man to pursue them a certain way, to, be the breadwinner, to essentially so they can be a stay at home wife, but yet she wants to behave or act in a certain way that doesn't align with traditional values. I have experienced that. I have received that
Well, that's
complaint.
why we're in a really mixed up world right now, because women have started becoming more independent, having their own careers, dressing sexy, being their own woman, right? Doing what, but yet you're right, the men still want this traditional value. And this is where they can pay a young girl to do that traditional value stuff. It's a situationship. Whatever he says, she'll do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it does become more tricky when a woman is less financially, like, if from a traditional perspective, right? From a very traditional perspective, the man is usually the breadwinner. He usually has the higher socioeconomic status. The women usually have less money and a lower socioeconomic status, at least from the monetary value perspective. And that created a certain type of relationship dynamic, and it works for some people. And I think when some women who become financially independent are highly successful themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It can create an issue when they do want a more traditional relationship dynamic, but they haven't set themselves up for that to happen. At least, even from just a mindset perspective, because I think a woman can be financially successful and independent, but still embody behaviors that are more traditional.
Right. Women won't date man who can't change a tire, but the woman herself can't make a dinner from scratch. It's true.
Yeah. I think I mean, I've heard that from some of my male clients too. It kind of goes to this traditional perspective, like where, like, okay, if a woman wants to be a kept woman, but yet she doesn't know how to maintain a household. Like, that was from a traditional perspective, that was the point of being a kept woman. You were a stay at home mom, you were a stay at home wife. And it wasn't just so that you could sit around and do nothing and shop and spend money and drink and party and buy nice clothes and nice accessories. That's not a traditional relationship. A traditional relationship would be a woman making dinner and having a meal ready for her husband when he comes
That's a
home
very
from
good
work.
point. So, what should women do moving into 2025? What would you say? Let's talk specifically about women. What should a woman do to make herself dateable for a man, to the best of her ability? Knowing men that you've, set up with on these dates, what do they want? What is the perfect woman for these guys?
Well, if a woman wants a traditional relationship dynamic, she needs to learn how to embody those more traditional behaviors.
Step
And so I think that
into your feminine.
yeah, I think that some women get confused on what that means. They think like it's only the exterior piece. Like, they're like, oh, I wear makeup, I wear dresses, I wear heels, like I'm very feminine, but yet their behaviors are not.
Masculine.
Yeah, they don't fall into that traditional
Taking
feminine role.
care of your man, making his dinner, getting his whatever that he wants for him, his paper, handing him his paper or whatever that would be. Could not
Yeah,
agree more. Sophie says, yeah.
yeah, I think like what I hear, like, from, like, for example, a lot of my male clients is like, that they don't mind if a woman has her own, a career and she's successful. That's fine, that's not what bothers them. But, like, they don't want a woman who's, like, competing with them
Mm.
professionally, talking about how, oh, well, I'm more successful than you, or talking about
Ooh.
their work the entire time, like when they're on a date or something. Try to leave that at the door and focus on more traditional feminine skills that they might have. Like, talk about cooking, or talk about how they like decorating, or demonstrate those skills, like that they know how to
Yeah.
maintain a household. Be more nurturing.
No, I get it. No, I totally agree.
Like,
I am not the one that's going to be talking about cooking, although I did cook for my children growing up. But stepping into the feminine, letting them open the car door for you, letting them talk about their day in business, take a back seat a little bit to your own business stuff.
yeah. I think, okay, here's another thing is that, like, and if a woman is extremely busy, like, and she has a busy career, a busy life, and she has a big life, but then she wants, like, a really traditional, powerful, masculine alpha man, she needs to make herself available to his schedule, because that is a very traditional role. I mean, like if we're looking like super traditional, I mean, women used to wait to be called on, right? They would sit at home during a very specific period during the Victorian era. They would sit at home dressed
Wait for the
up,
call.
dolled up, and wait for a man to call on them and hope that he would call on them. Like I have experienced this with a lot of my female clients in modern dating where they are successful, accomplished women, and they have these big lives, and which is great, it's appealing to a certain degree. However, then when they want a man who's even more successful than them or has even a bigger life than them, because like that's what they find attractive, and they want somebody who's even more masculine than they are, in terms of that energy. But then when the man says, hey, do you want to go out Friday or Saturday, because that's when he's available? No, I can't, I have work, or I'm going out with some friends.
Technology and society is making romance extinct. Women feel if she found an 8.9 in a man, then there has to be a 9.2 and so on. Yeah, we kind of talked about that too. It's
Yeah,
like,
the bigger, better deal.
yeah.
Um, so, I think that that's something.
But sorry, really quick. There was that whole thing about like you shouldn't be too available, like in the beginning, anyways, because there has to be a little bit of a chase, right? Like if you're like, they call you at 6 o'clock on a Friday and they're like, do you want to go out tonight? Are you supposed to be like, yep, have nothing to do. I'll be right there. Or are you like, oh gosh, my life doesn't revolve around you right now. Like you need to.
Yeah, I think finding a happy medium. I mean, like one of the things I recommend women do is if they do have really busy lives, and is to provide the man with their availability. The window.
And that goes back to picking that day where you're
Yes.
like,
So that way, like the men know when they can pursue her,
right.
and it makes it easy. It's just logistically it makes sense, right? The man knows when you're available, and he can pursue. He can say, "Hey, I know you said you're available on Friday. Like, let's go to dinner. I'll make reservations." They can still pursue and take all those actions. The women are just letting them know when they're available, for them to pursue, which I think is helpful. And it also then, even if let's say the woman has Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday free. She doesn't have to provide all of those days. She could simply say, I'm available on Tuesday or Wednesday. Um, and so it's like finding this happy medium. But if a woman really wants to lean into that traditional female role, she needs to make herself available to the man.
Can she be successful if she doesn't want to lean into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's all about the relationship dynamic, and the type of person they want to attract. Like if they want to attract an alpha, a very traditional alpha type male,
You're
they're
gonna have
not
to
going to be
sit back.
successful. Right? Exactly. They have to lean into that more feminine. They have to essentially become the beta. Like you can't have two alphas. It doesn't make sense. And I know that like there's like a lot of discourse out there where like, you have your women who are like, oh, alpha women are attracting alpha men and they can be alphas together. No, because like sure, a woman might be an alpha of her pack and a man might be an alpha of his pack, but like when they form a relationship, that's their new pack. And you can't have two alphas. You have
know
to have
what?
one beta.
That is genius.
So it's
Because you're not losing your identity. You're still an alpha woman. He still is alpha man. But if you want to be with it, I totally, it makes so much sense. That was genius.
yes. And I think that that's one of the biggest things. Like again, like women need to think about how can I lean into a more feminine, traditional role if I want a more traditional masculine man. If they don't want that, then they don't need to do that.
All right, here's the last question because we only have 4 minutes left. So what about the men in being successful in 2025? How are they fucking up? Where are they going wrong? What should they be doing to attract the woman that they want?
So one, it's kind of very similar principles, but just applying it in a different way. One, they need to make time for a relationship. Like, from a societal perspective, men in general aren't taught to put as much value and priority on romantic relationships as women are. And just their interpersonal relationships in general. I mean, there's a reason why there's a lot of cliche TV shows and movies out there where like the man's working a lot and the wife says, you forgot our anniversary, you forgot my birthday, can't you just go to your son's football game? The reason why that cliche exists is because we put more pressure on men to be successful in business and focus more on money in their career than we do for them to focus on their relationships.
But lately it's we're like, okay, no, you have to focus on the family. You have to focus on being rich. You have to focus on helping out at home. You have to, right?
Yeah. So it's like finding that again, allocating that, like for example, one designated date day would help, like saying, all right, I'm going to start prioritizing romantic relationships. And I'm going to do that by allocating one designated date day per week. Sacrosanct time to focus on relationships.
All right, we have another question here. Sorry for repeating. Do you feel women self-sabotage a good man and relationship because she's only used to toxic ones? And I would say, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, everybody forms relationship habits, and if somebody has a habits one that are attracting toxic people, then for sure they're going to take those behaviors and habits into any relationship they enter. But then also, if they've gotten used to interacting in a certain way with a toxic person, then they're going to engage that way with somebody who might not be toxic. I've experienced this where somebody is so used to like engaging in conflict in a toxic way where maybe they're like super passive aggressive or they're really aggressive even, then when they get into a relationship with somebody who approaches conflict in a healthy way, they still engage in that passive aggressive behavior, or they're super confrontational and the other person's like, whoa, like I'm sorry. Like I had a client, for example, I think this is a good example, where she was so used to engaging with toxic men, like of this strong back and forth, this pursuer distancer dynamic, where like if the guy wasn't available or he wasn't chasing her, she would engage in certain passive aggressive
Mhm.
toxic behaviors to try to get him to pursue her again. And she was then dating this guy, and he wasn't like that at all, and he was genuinely busy, and she took it as, oh, he's distancing me from me, he's not interested. So she posted like a really sexy photo of
Wow.
herself online, and he's like, whoa. And she's like, and it was suggestive. It wasn't just a photo, it was like the caption was
Yeah.
suggestive. And he's like, what's going on here, like why are you doing this? And she's like,
Oh.
I haven't heard from you in a few days. And
Oh.
he's like, I was dealing with a dying parent. Like, and she's like,
Oops.
oh, like, and I mean, needless to say, he ended it.
Yeah.
Like, and so like it was a bummer for her. She was super disappointed. And I'm like, I don't know why you did that. And she's like, well, because in the
She
past.
got anxious.
And I'm like, exactly, yes. So to that answer the question, yes, I feel like both men and women can engage in
So,
sabotaging behavior.
but so that just goes back to moving into 2025, get out that journal, write down what hasn't been serving you, what's not been working for you. So if you are sabotaging your relationships, write it out and kind of close that book and start fresh, right?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
really quick, back to the man. So you think the man should do a lot of what the woman is doing. Anything else? So setting a date, making time to date if that's what your intentions are this year. Anything else for the men?
Yeah, being confident in the pursuit. I think that some men are question whether they should pursue more aggressively, whether they should be more passive. And I recommend all of my male clients err on the side of being a little bit more assertive and
Mm.
confident than
And
being passive.
sorry to cut you off. I've been talking to my son about these things, and I'm like, you know what? I think both sides, men and women, everybody's so concerned of, do they like me? Is it going to work? I want it to work. Like they're tiptoeing on eggshells. Like just be you. And if it's going to work, it's going to work. And if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But sitting too far back won't get you there. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I think a good rule of thumb for both men and women is like after you've kind of started dating somebody, you're a little bit further into the courtship. If you're trying to, a good rule of thumb to help you determine whether you should or should not do something is ask yourself, would I do this if I had a secure connection with this person?
Mm.
Because, like, for example, if you're trying to decide, should I send this text, should I not send this text? Well, if I was in a relationship with this person, I was feeling more secure. If I felt like we had a secure connection,
Would I say?
would I send this? If you say yes, then yes, do that, because then you're going to be acting in a secure and confident way,
Ooh, I like that.
which is going to make the other person feel more attracted to you, and it is going to more likely make them
Yeah, you
feel.
don't want to sound needy and worried and right. Like, don't ever sit that. So, for instance, we've talked about a lot of your clients that maybe are an anxious attachment. Read the book Attached, my favorite book of all times, where they're an anxious attachment. They don't hear from a guy for one day when they've only gone on 2 dates, and it was similar to this woman who, posts a suggested picture because she didn't hear from the guy. And you send 5 texts saying, why haven't you called me? And you look like a complete idiot.
Yes, right. And then it's going to turn the other person off,
And then
right?
you're
It
like,
is
just like you said, like my parent was dying and I was dealing with it, or I was out of town, or my cell phone dropped in the toilet and I didn't have, like, we don't know. Like, if you're an anxious attachment, you always assume that it's you, that you personally did something as an anxious attachment. I would always go directly to, what did I do? I did something wrong, instead of thinking, shit, you know what? We all have busy lives. Who the hell knows what's going on in their life, especially when you're just starting to date somebody. So you got to give them a little bit of grace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that men can do is, we put more societal pressure on women to focus on their physical appearance than we typically do men. But we start to form the first impression of somebody within 30 seconds of meeting them,
Yep.
and a lot of that's visual, of course. So I think men should really focus on their aesthetics, in a way that it's designed
Thank
to
you
attract a
for
woman.
saying that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Men, you expect us to look all perfect and pretty. You know what? It's not a bad thing. Get a magnifying mirror, trim up your hair,
Yeah,
right?
it's a level of self-care shows a certain level of confidence, right? It shows that you care about yourself.
And it's
And
about looking good for your
yes,
person.
exactly. I was going to say exactly. I think it's really important to show the person that you are trying to impress them. I always say don't dress to impress, dress to attract.
I agree. I love that. Okay, our hour is totally up. So, hey, stay tuned, you guys. We're going to be going live on Tuesdays now. It's a better day for me. A lot less travel and crazy going on. So, we'll be doing Tuesday nights, except we got to look at the calendar for the next couple Tuesdays. We'll figure it out. So, just stay tuned. Keep up. Look for our posts that when we're going live. And let us know if you have any questions. Follow Brandon Rader, follow Lifestyle Jewels, and stay tuned. Hopefully, January, February, we'll maybe have an event. We're going to start working on this. I got lots of cool stuff.
I love it. All right. Well, it was so wonderful seeing you.
I know it feels like way too long. All right. All right.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye
you guys.
bye.
Bye.